Welcome to The Confidence Curve with Ashley and Rick Bowers, where personal and professional journeys define the art of scaling with confidence. Whether you're a business leader navigating change or someone seeking personal growth, this podcast offers insights and actionable advice to help you thrive. Now let's dive into today's conversation with our incredible guest.
Welcome to the Confidence Curve podcast. My name is Ashley Bowers. I'll be your host today with Apex GTS Advisors. Our guest today is Stephanie Waldrop. She is the CEO of Employee Benefits International. I've had the great pleasure to get to know her quite a bit over the last few years, and even more so in the last year and a half or so, and just brings a wealth of knowledge to the employee benefits space, really caring about your business, caring about your employees, and what the entire benefits process can do for your organization. So welcome, Stephanie. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. If you want to just kick us off and tell us a little bit about your background and Employee Benefits International.
Sure. So, I have been in the insurance industry for approaching 30 years. It gives you a little bit of an aging, but for a long time, spent over 10 of those years on the insurance carrier side, really learning the guts behind the machine, if you will, and had a real passion to bring that knowledge to advocate on behalf of employers and their employees to control their benefits cost and pull the right levers. That took me to the consulting and agency side, and about a little over 10 years ago now, started Employee Benefits International in the Arizona marketplace, and that's how the journey began, so to speak.
Yeah. You know, a lot of people get into business because they have a passion in a specific area, and in addition to that, you really have a passion for scaling your organization. So talk a little bit about that journey that you're on and what's really driving you to make a bigger impact across the employee benefits space.
Sure. Well, I guess starting with the first part of that question and, getting into the business because you have a passion for it. I was in the unfortunate situation of having a tragic car accident at the age of 18 and ended up breaking my neck in two places, just due to family dynamics, among many other things. I was left navigating the healthcare system really by myself at that point with a pretty severe situation. And didn't know whether I had insurance or not. And so that led me down quite a journey and really opened my eyes to a lot of the challenges that exist today and getting good quality healthcare and navigating insurance. And really created not only a strong knowledge base at a very early age, but also a real passion within me to leave an indelible mark for anyone that I encounter in their experience and journey with the healthcare system. So that's really how my passion for the industry was born, so to speak. And in terms of leadership and scaling, that's been an evolution. Maybe like the stone at the bottom of a river, I've been molded over time. I certainly didn't set out to lead and scale, but naturally, when you take care of people and are accountable and have energy to solve their problems versus sell them something, the reciprocal of that is that you usually have the ability to grow in a pretty rapid way, and that's certainly been our experience. So I'd like to say we're really blessed to have had the scaling challenges that we've had in that regard, and really that's that journey has become something that I've come to enjoy, but hasn't always been that way. Learning to make sure that our systems and our team and knowledge base across all levels of the organization are keeping pace, and that we're looking into the future for where those developments need to go long term.
Leading organizations, benefits is that thing. Obviously it comes up every year and it's a necessary evil and we have to have it. And what about the attrition? And there can be just this daunting feeling every single year.
Yeah.
And I've had the privilege to get to see a little bit, behind the scenes with EBI and the constant talk track about how you're making a difference with the benefits, and not only for the employees, but also for the employer, and understanding how it can be an attraction and a retention tool without it being this thing that, they're up against every single year with the right data and analytics and sophistication. What drives you to go that deep
Yeah.
because I think that that's really incredible. And then if you want to give any insights into that process.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the core of that is at EBI we aim to serve clients the way we would want to be served, and some of the inherent challenges with the industry is that there are a lot of misaligned interest in every facet of our healthcare system, and that's a whole separate podcast, so to speak, but. Specifically as it relates to the brokerage and consulting world that EBI lives in for employee benefits, there's higher profits in the easy button. And as more and more agencies get gobbled up by private equity and are beholden to stockholders and things of that nature, those conversations about profitability get very intense, and the service model it gets squeezed. I mean, that's the inherent, outcome. And so I just, I think that we focus on having a very high touch service model and providing employers with the insights, level of analysis, and overview that we would want in making those same decisions. And the outcome is, generally, and this ranges from small employers to employers with several thousand employees, that they oftentimes tell us that for the first time they feel like they really understand and appreciate benefits in a different way for their organization versus that, I could think, very daunting process that you teed off the question with. And so it is a matter of a lot of employers don't really understand how benefits actually impact attraction or retention, or have the insights, the meaningful insights that actually tell them how to impact it or where the program needs to be tweaked. So that's, generally part of an annual process for us, that we're looking at that year over year and making sure that employers do know how their program stacks up and discussing, is this a pain point? And, benefits isn't the end all be all for attraction and retention. It's a piece, it's a component of total compensation. Obviously, culture comes into play. Right. There's lots of different facets of this. We launched an HR consulting aspect of the business last year that's going very well, aimed to solve some of those challenges, because as we dive into these conversations, employers need more resources than just the employee benefit programs and engagement to deploy. And so we're really looking to partner with them on creating a holistic conversation. The beginning of the engagement with any client is always about solving their immediate problems. They're reaching out to us for a reason. Sometimes they're reaching out to us for multiple reasons. But at the end of the day, we're still going to deploy on all of the different pillars that are important to have a holistic conversation with them and leave them in a very good place with their benefit program. And measurably solving for what we can each year, meeting them where they are from a budget, from a bandwidth, all of those, dynamics have to come into play.
Absolutely. No, thank you. Switching a little bit to your leadership style. What are some lessons that you wish you would have learned earlier in your career, or maybe attributes that you've developed, more recently that you wish you would have had as you were starting out, either in leadership in other organizations or as you started EBI?
Yeah, so much like scaling a business, leadership is an area where I would say I'm I'm a stone that's being molded. I continue to be molded as I experience new endeavors in that category. But I would say one of the biggest lessons I've learned over time is to listen more. The people around me have really great insights and generally have ideas on how to solve a problem, and oftentimes they don't share that information with you because they haven't been asked. So it's about engaging the team and bringing them along for the journey and making sure that that you're getting those key insights from the team members that are in the day-to-day of a specific process. It brings to mind a story of I guess a leadership faux pas that we had as an organization, where at the leadership level we vetted this really seemingly great technology that was going to solve some big problems for the organization. A lot of complaints from the team and manual processes associated with a key part of the work that we do. And so we were very excited about the technology and deployed it to the team, at the worst time of year, thinking it was going to be a Hail Mary and that they were really going to love and appreciate this new resource that they were provided. And you know where this is going because I said it was a faux pas, but the technology was not as user-friendly as was anticipated. The learning curve with the team was greater than anticipated. The time of year was absolutely incorrect to deploy. And ultimately, it cost the organization quite a bit of money and resources to deploy something and then have to pull it back, right? And of course, the grief that the team felt along the way didn't go unnoticed. So I think in terms of that, often when we're making big decisions that impact day-to-day processes, and I'm very careful now to make sure that the conversations are being had at the right levels and that the team's being brought along for the journey at different touch points. And timing is another big leadership lesson. There is a good time and a bad time for just about everything as it relates to leadership. So
and every once in a while, you don't know what it is until after it's done, and you're like, oh, okay, now I know it was there.
Yeah,
that's where we were at.
Yeah, and I would say another leadership. There are some things that are adaptable, some things that are less adaptable about leadership styles. And that usually has something to do with willingness to change or desire to change in that category. And so I move personally at a pretty fast pace and have a high sense of urgency for things, and not everybody's wired that way. And so I've also learned the right types of team members to surround myself with, to ensure that we're going to be rowing in the same direction and not have a paddle that's causing us to go in circles in the journey. So yeah.
No, that makes sense. One of the big leadership wins that I look at over my career is when I've had an exit that maybe didn't go in an ideal way, right? You have to make a decision, or you're leading them down a path to make a decision, and it's hard in that moment, but a year later, 2 years later, that individual is coming around and wanting to have lunch or get together for coffee, and suddenly you're talking about everything that you helped them with and how they see it very differently now than they saw it in the moment, and they're thanking you for that time, because as much as they wanted to hang on that it was the right place, it wasn't the right place for them, because that does happen. It's a part of being in business. And so that's one of the things, I love the fact that people come back around and have that conversation with me, even in those hard moments. What is something as a leader that you want to be known for?
I think the word that jumps out at me, just gut instinct, and in response to that is opportunity. Okay. I, coming from very humble beginnings myself, have had an immense opportunity in this industry to not only impact lives, but also to impact personally my family's life. And I'm a big believer in, mentoring, giving opportunity, giving skill sets, helping people grow and develop. So that's, something that stands out to me is, I want every team member who walks in our door to know that there is, a open dialogue and pathway to success, whatever that looks like for them. As long as it's in line with the company's direction and core values, and develop that conversation over time. And, not everybody wants the same pathway. Not everybody wants to be, challenged to grow, right? So, thirst for growth is one of our core values, and we do lean on attracting team members that want to grow and want new opportunity through their journey. But we've also learned that that's not always the case. So, but I aim to provide people with opportunity and help them reimagine, what their impact can be.
Sure. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's one of the lessons I wish I would have learned earlier in my career, that not everybody wants to just go up and work crazy, and that you actually need the balance as your organization gets larger and larger and larger, right? You need people who want to stay at that front desk forever, because it's such a hard position to fill, and those different things. And sometimes you might see opportunity in them and potential in them, but you also have to meet them where they're at, right? I could have benefited from that a few times in my career.
Yeah, I mean, I think of a particular circumstance where we had a team member that came in and had never even, worked in an office job before. And you fast forward 3 years later and they're, making a very high wage and a big impact on the organization. But each step along the way was a huge challenge to comfort zone and, pushing their boundaries and limits in different ways, with what their prior experience was versus what their aptitude and capability was. And at the end of the day, sometimes you have to recognize, to your point, that not everybody wants that growth. And sometimes just because someone's capable of doing more, it can be detrimental to encourage them to do more if they don't want to stretch. So yeah,
absolutely. Focusing in on the industry a little bit, obviously, the healthcare industry has a lot of external factors impacting it all the time. What are the biggest factors that you see impacting the industry this year? And, what do some of the larger employers, need to be kind of on the lookout for as they're going through their process?
Yeah. I think that probably some of the biggest impacts in the coming year are more on the legislative front, right? I mean, we have obviously a new administration and kind of a complete turnover in a lot of those seats, and there is already a lot of discussion and talk about transformation that's needed, and particular to the healthcare industry. I expect to see, not just at the state level, but also at the federal level, discussions surrounding pharmacy benefit management entities, maybe some on the wholesaler side for prescription medications, but that's clearly been an area of desired impact, and it's necessary to have some disruption there, I think, just based on the escalation of pharmacy cost as a percentage of spend. I mean, I think back to my insurance carrier days, and it was very clearly that you would expect pharmacy to be somewhere between 13 and 15% of your overall spend, and now it's very typical for it to be in the low 20s to 30% range for an organization. And so that's an area that's continued to escalate. There's no slowdown in sight there in the current environment outside of change. Just due to the fact that most of the medications that are in development are specialty or, medications that alter genetic. And so those are very expensive medications, and they have big implications on the cost of healthcare. And there needs to be some discussion surrounding how that gets handled, because whether an employer is fully insured or whether an employer is self-funded, and we serve that whole gamut. And there's the in-between, but at the end of the day, no matter how the employer is funding their insurance cost, escalations in healthcare cost overall throughout the system are borne through premiums and are funded by employers. So the smallest employers aren't insulated from the long-term impacts of these types of developments in our healthcare system when they essentially end up footing the bill. Yeah. So there's a lot to be said there. Some of the legislation will only impact Medicare, which is unfortunate, I think, for our commercial insurance clients. Yeah. But there's a site of care legislation that's being looked at that would essentially require that the same services receive a similar compensation, regardless of if it's at the hospital or if it's at a doctor's office. Huge implications in terms of the cost of care and savings in the cost of care if that were to pass, because it's no dirty little secret that you can pay $400 for an MRI at a freestanding facility, or several $1,000s in an inpatient or an urgent care facility or imaging center that's associated with the hospital. And there's been a lot of acquisitions of those types of facilities to bill at the higher rate in the system. So I'd love to see some of that legislation come into the employer space, but I think, as far as on the horizon, I do expect to see some decisions over the next administration related to legislative outcomes. And then in terms of employers, I would say that the main thing that we're seeing there is that more and more employers are awakening, say maybe getting red pilled to the fact that there are many aspects of healthcare costs that they do have an ability to control and impact. And that's probably, that's where we spend the vast majority of our time and focus with clients that have more than 100 employees, where we can get raw claims data and really dive into what is driving their cost and how can it be impacted. And so we're definitely seeing all the benchmarking supports it, that more and more clients are entering into the types of programs where they really do have the ability to take control. And then it really matters to have a partner who knows how to analyze the data and also, solve for the problems that it represents. Everyone will say they do that in this space when you get into that large employer marketplace. But the reality of the circumstances is that many firms try to deploy as little resources as possible to include that as a pillar. And, we aim to make a difference and control the cost for the employer. Ultimately, we aim to impact the lives of the employees. Right. So to do that, we have to help the employer control their cost so that they can deliver a higher value of benefit for their budgetary spend to the employee in the form of richer benefits or reduced cost. Yeah.
Thank you so much for all of that. And it's such a scary place. And so often I think as leaders inside organizations, we literally are looking at it once a year and really need to be looking at it more holistically and throughout the year, and, giving time and the education process of the employee population of how to use the benefits and where to go and who to call and all of those things too. I think is such a big factor in all of it. Kind of flipping back to the leadership side of things, and, so many see senior executives of they've got it all together, and, we'll use the phrase duck on water, right? We look like we've got it all, we're there, we have it. But we still have the same, talk tracks in our heads and the same, demons on our shoulders at times. And so the thought of imposter syndrome, right? I think most of us go through that at some point in our career. Have you ever felt like you've been in that place of, is this really happening? Am I really here? Should I be here? And if so, how did you deal with it? And if you haven't done that, how have you managed to stay away from it?
What's your secret?
Yeah.
I don't have a secret. So I think everyone goes through that at some point in their career, right? If you're soaring to new heights, at some point you're going to find yourself in a room where you say, "How did I get here?" And how am I viewed in the room? Which is essentially how imposter syndrome is born. I would say very early, I had success very early on. So in my early 20s, I, was very quickly climbing and found myself in very large boardrooms with senior executives and, I guess, presenting to CEOs and CFOs in my early 20s. And I was always underestimated in those environments. I think, and always the youngest person by a margin in the room. And so, I overcame that mostly by knowledge. So nobody was going to understand the dynamics of the problems we were solving for and have opinions on them the way that I did coming into those meetings. And so I never shrunk away from being an active voice at the table. And I think that that's probably one of the, the biggest way I overcame that as I evolved into, leadership roles versus just that, that early dynamic of being green, so to speak. I would say that the way I overcame that is surrounding myself with other entrepreneurs, making sure that I really understood whether the challenges that we were facing as an organization were unique to us, never are, by the way, or, something that every business deals with, and what are the tools and resources to solve those problems. So for me, having resources, through Arizona Growth Advisors or Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, those are two venues where I've just found a lot of collaborative, entrepreneur, CEO type think space, if you will, for resolving and growing as an organization.
Yeah. And so, I mean, on that, you just mentioned Arizona Growth Advisors and EO. What other ways do you continue to grow and develop as a leader? I know you're a big reader. Like, how do you find the time to invest in your own growth?
I was just going to say, what other things do I do with what time?
Yeah. I was saying, how do you find the time?
It's a valid question. So I don't watch a lot of TV, and I can't honestly remember the last time that I did. So I'm not up to speed on any of the latest series any streaming none of that. But I am a junkie for documentaries and podcasts. So, some of those are more on the personal and health side of things, which absolutely impact me as a leader. But oftentimes they're also thought leadership, related to what we do every day. And so I usually have a podcast or some content that I'm listening to as I get ready in the morning is a big time that it's more audio content for me. I'm usually doing calls in the car, so I don't get that time that some entrepreneurs find a window with. In terms of reading, I will listen to books on audio. I prefer the 1.5 speed. Yes. Get through it as fast as possible. And I will more often read in downtime. When I'm not during the work week, just because my brain's kind of on overdrive in the work week, solving for other challenges. But I am an avid reader. Just finished Gap in the Gain, which is a great book, great perspective. So I seek out thought leadership on business growth and leadership and scaling and solving for the healthcare industry challenges. Those are all areas that I spend time learning. But the bulk of my time outside of reading and podcast would be related to the time I spend with EO and Arizona Growth Advisors. And there's not a whole lot more time I could give in that category.
I know. And even in those things, and I mean, I'm not afraid to say it on podcasts, right? It's like that morning's like, do I really have time for this today? But then you go and it's like, oh, this is exactly what I needed today. And that whole point of self-care, whether it's, doing something like that and getting around peers where you have a little bit of a group therapy session, if you will, right? And be able to kind of talk about issues out loud that maybe you can't in other rooms, or whether it's a massage, whether it's a workout, whether it's a hike. I hate the word balance because what does that actually mean, right? But obviously you have a family, and like to do things and create experiences there. So how do you get those, or what do you do to get those recharge moments to kind of create that sense of balance in a world that's obviously very, very much work driven?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll just comment on the peer group aspect that you shared. I think it's that old adage: if you all throw your problems into a pile, you'll quickly be trying to get yours back. And so I think part of that journey is certainly the content and the learning and the solving problems with other business leaders for their organizations that you may not have encountered yet, or you already navigated, and you can be more of an experience share resource for. But you're right. In the morning of time being spent in those environments, it's like, how do I, do I have the space for this today? But I can honestly say I never regret committing the space. And so it's funny that question parlays into balance because it's one of those things that can create more imbalance, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I truly feel in this type of a role where you're leading an organization and you're also serving clients and have a family. I mean, my husband and I have a family of 5 boys now. I say 5 boys, 5 young men now. We're in a different season of our life.
I was gonna say like boys becoming men, but
yeah. They're 20 to 27 now, so we're on a different cycle, but. But balance is a big key part of it. And how do I find that time? I think, I will incorporate more micro type physical exercise into my day, which means I might do 100 squats in the morning, or lift some weights and while I'm on a lymphatic machine and also in front of a red light therapy, right? Like I'm stacking these things because my time is so precious. But limited time to make sure I'm moving weights, whether that's my body or physical weights in a day is somewhat important. But something I never easily part with is an afternoon walk. So at the end of the day, no matter what time I get home, putting on sneakers and walking out my front door. I'm very fortunate to live at the base of a hill, so it gives me a nice little more than a mile round trip jaunt that has a good elevation to it, and that helps me physically. It helps me recharge. I'm super blessed when it's at sunset because I can never get enough of the beautiful Arizona sunsets, but it's just it's a cherished part of my day that also has a lot of other tertiary benefits to
Absolutely.
it. So it's the little things that you just add up.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the stacking.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we were in a session on Friday and I was talking about stacking the different things to hit the things that are most important to you. And so if you can elevate your mindset, your relationship, and your physical by going on a walk with your spouse or your significant other, you can kind of hit three important and core areas of your life all with one activity versus three separate ones. So definitely a big piece of that. Is there a particular book or podcast that has really shaped your career, or when new leaders are saying, like, what should I read? What would be something you would suggest?
I don't know that I can point to a book that shaped my whole career. I mean, if maybe there's one, The Purpose-Driven Life, there's a lot of good nuggets in that. I believe at my core that if you're going to devote such a huge part of the time that you have here to something, that it should be something that you feel purpose around and alignment with. And so I think there's a lot in developing where do you have passion and purpose as a person, and aligning the time that you spend and the mark that you leave with that purpose. So I that's what I would say. And then just another resource that has a big gamut of leadership and business, but also personal development. I love The Diary of a CEO. Okay. It's a big go-to for me. Just you never know what topic's going to be discussed, but there's always something to learn from a bright mind who's very purpose-driven and passionate. And so I love that genuinely as just thought leadership in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of final question, and then we'll do some wrap up.
Okay.
What advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know today? It's always a hard one.
It is a hard one. And I'm not one of those types of people who spends a lot of time dwelling on what would I have done differently, to be very, very honest with you. So that is a hard question to ponder. But advice I would give my younger self, I think that every single part of the journey that I've been on professionally and personally, the hardest times and the best times, all cumulative, I would give more credit to the tough times. When you're going through something really tough, it's easy to, I think it's easy for us all as humans to go to the place of why is this happening to me? Or having it be something personal or out of your control, or there's a number of ways that we cope with difficult situations when we're stretched beyond our ordinary comfort zone. But I think it's that stretching that really is the fuel behind our growth. And when I look back and think of some of the toughest things that I've gone through over the course of my career, it's landed me in a place. In each of those scenarios, I can find that silver lining where I wouldn't take back the tough thing that happened, right? And so the advice I would give my younger self going through any of those tough situations would be to find that silver lining as quick as you can and have that be your focus. Because if you focus on the problem, or the trauma is such an overrated word today, or the trauma, or the, or what have you, then you end up in this kind of negative cycle with whatever that is, and you miss the growth from it a lot of times. So I guess that would be, I wish I would have learned that at an earlier age, that tough situations, challenges, problems, if you will, are really gifts if you use them to your advantage. So
I love that. Well, obviously, I'm sure you're connecting with a ton of our listeners, and just how you run your business, how you lead your life, your leadership persona that you have, how will people get a hold of you if they want to talk to you about their benefit cycle?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can certainly reach out and connect with me there. Stephanie Waldrop is my profile's under that name. Employee Benefits International is also can be followed on LinkedIn. Our website is www.ebint.com. So certainly another platform for outreach.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. We enjoyed having you, and I just appreciate the relationship and the friendship and everything we're doing together. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to The Confidence Curve. We hope today's episode left you inspired and ready to embrace your journey confidently. Remember, whether you're leading a team, growing your business, or pursuing personal growth, each step forward builds your curve. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. For more insights and resources, visit us at apexgts.com. Until next time, keep climbing the curve.